Rejoice, ye penny-pinching nerds, rejoice! For this is a season unbound by our bank accounts, unfettered by fees. A legendary age of liberty. This is the summer of free! Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here celebrating more of the summer of free. This time I'm going to try and help you and I get one or two free movie nights that we can enjoy this month by going to voodoo.com, V-U-D-U.com. Now, sites like this often will kind of rotate the movies that they have on offer for free, and so I'm not sure if these movies will be available after June 2017, but they should all be available at the very least for this month. And I've got three categories of movies that I wanted to highlight. Now, there's a ton of movies that you can go to that you can watch for free. If you go to voodoo.com, you'll see a tab at the top that says Movies on Us. That's the tab that you want to click on for all their free stuff. It does come with ads, but other than that, unless it's otherwise noted, these are the unedited theatrical releases of these movies. Okay, so first, the superhero movies that I wanted to point out. These are all animated movies, and I've seen most of them. The first two are the Ultimate Avengers movies. The first one's just called Ultimate Avengers the movie. The second one, Ultimate Avengers 2. If you've read the Ultimate Avengers comic books, then these stories will be familiar. I can't remember if Ultimate Avengers 2 draws heavily from the comics or not. It might be an original story, but Ultimate Avengers the movie, at least for sure, is a combination of the first two big story arcs from Ultimate Avengers, and I really enjoyed those early story arcs in the Ultimates comics, and I feel like even though these aren't quite as kind of like grim and gritty as those comics, they still represent the source material really well. Yeah, I especially like the Ultimate take on the Hulk and how he is just kind of a freaking monster, you know. And I don't think he gets quite as grotesque. It's been a long time. I still own these movies. It's been a long time since I watched them though. But anyway, I just like the interpretation of that character. If you haven't ever seen these animated movies before, I would definitely recommend checking them out, especially if you're a Marvel fan. For my taste, even though the Avengers movie just kind of blew me away the first two times that I watched it, it took a steep dive in my enjoyment after that. But these movies, I find, have been much more, especially the first one, Ultimate Avengers, the movie, have been much more consistent in my personal enjoyment upon repeat viewing. So definitely I recommend both of those. The next Marvel animated movie, and these are actually all Marvel animated movies, is Doctor Strange. This one was kind of inconsistent for me in terms of its pacing. I wasn't always 100% engaged, but I still enjoyed a lot of it. And I also really like magic, you know, and fantasy, and I think that it's a neglected genre. And so even though this is modern day, you know, magic and fantasy, it still has a lot of the aesthetics of, like, you know, ancient, you know, magical cultures and fantasy and stuff like that. So if you enjoyed the Doctor Strange movie, this is, you know, a different take on the character. It's a different flavor. Generally, these animated movies are more serious than the Marvel movies. But I mean, if you found that, boy, I'm really interested in this character and I love this concept, then definitely check out the Doctor Strange animated movie. It's really solid stuff. Along the same lines, the Invincible Iron Man. Same thing for my experience. I felt like there was a little bit, maybe toward the end in the final battle and stuff, I found myself maybe a little bit bored or somehow not connecting with the intensity of the action, but so much of the movie is really strong, and you might find that it's totally consistent and in its enjoyment for you the entire way through. But yeah, another movie that I definitely recommend if you enjoy Iron Man. Very different take on the character from, you know, the Robert Downey Jr. In fact, I think this animated movie came out before the first Robert Downey Jr. animated or live-action Iron Man movie. Very different take on the character. I think probably more in line with how we would typically, or at least before the live-action movies, how we would have thought of the Tony Stark character. Anyway, but very, very enjoyable, and it's got a nice combination of like cell animation and computer animation that is kind of pretending to be cell animation. So in a similar way to how the Iron Giant made the Giant, all like CG animated, even though it kind of looked cell animated, to kind of have the robotic elements stand out from the rest of the environment. They do some similar things in this animated movie, and I think it works really well. These last two I have not seen. Planet Hulk, I've heard nothing but good things about. When I saw that it was on here, I was like, you know, I should fire that up some night when I'm playing video games and I just kind of feel like having something else on in the background, because I've heard nothing but good things about Planet Hulk, and I haven't heard a thing about Thor: Tales of Asgard, but I thought since all these other ones are on there that I should mention that one as well. Maybe as you're kind of like getting amped up to see Thor Ragnarok, you're kind of in a Thor mood, and you might check this one out and see what it has to offer for Thor fans. All right, moving on from superheroes, a couple of horror movies that I think might be worth checking out. The first one is Monsters: Dark Continent. Now, I haven't seen this movie. I watched the trailer, and it looks like it has the same production quality probably as the first one, but I'm not sure if it's going to have the same kind of dramatic storytelling. The first movie is a quiet movie centered on a couple that are kind of I think they're like in Africa or something like that. They're not in America. They're somewhere in like a jungle, I think, and they're encountering these massive monsters. The cool thing about these monsters and how they handle them in the original movie, and by the looks of the trailer in the second movie, is they're giant. You know, not like Godzilla size, but you know, somewhere around like some versions of King Kong, big, towering, walking above buildings and stuff. But yet they come out often at night, and they're also very quiet. And so you can be out at night where it's really in a really dark environment, out off the highway or something like that, where it's not lit, there's not a bunch of lights everywhere, and these things can actually sneak up on you despite being so huge. And that was really striking to me, that they would combine the whole monster sneaking up on you thing with the giant monster movie concept. I tend to like these smaller, you know, humanoid-sized monsters that can kind of chase you through corridors and stuff like that, and you learn more about them as they're revealed over time, as opposed to the giant monsters that are just hammering on buildings, and they're more like disaster movies, you know. So this seems to be kind of combining those two, or like a bridge between those two types of monster movies, and I really enjoyed the first one. I think I'm probably going to check the second one out because it looks like it's giving the same care and attention to visual effects that the first one did, to really make them look, I think, you know, to the same level as many big budget sci-fi movies. And yet it's a you can tell it's a smaller movie, but not in the sense that it feels cheap, just in the sense that, okay, you can tell they are playing to their strengths, not to their weaknesses. It is more grounded. It is just, you know, a smaller movie, but still looks like it's really well made. Whether the story is any good or not, I have no idea, but I think I'm probably going to check that one out. One that I can vouch for, that I would put in the classic movie category. I don't know how well it would stand up today. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but that's An American Werewolf in London. And one of the reasons that this is such a classic for me is because of how it uses practical effects. This came out, like, I think in the 80s, before, you know, we had CGI, of course, and so they really used makeup effects to show, like, and there's like an iconic scene in this movie where this American traveling in London, he contracts lycanthropy, werewolfism, and the movie is about him, you know, just discovering what's happened to him and what it means to be a werewolf, and the agonizing transformation, you know, into a werewolf. And they, you know, they'll put like makeup on him, that they'll put little air bubble packs in that they can pump up so you can see his face actually growing and changing and stuff, and it's all practical, you know. And so even though you could say, oh yeah, that's just one of those like air packet things that they're using, it still doesn't look like a cartoon, because it's not a cartoon. It was filmed live right there on the set. And so anyway, for that reason alone, for someone of my you know, particular interests, this one's definitely worth checking out. Okay, and then the last category is fantasy. Now this is only for those that like really like fantasy movies and are unsatisfied with how few are made. How few, like, you know, sword and sorcery or medieval style fantasy movies are made. Mythica 1 and 2, there's a fifth movie in this series that's on Kickstarter. Only the first two are available for free on Vudu, and the other one that I would point to is Dragon Age Redemption. Now, I think to enjoy movies like these, and I haven't watched these. I've seen Dragon Age Redemption, but I haven't seen Mythica 1 and 2, just the trailers. I think the key probably to enjoying these movies for what they are is to go in and say, what if I were to travel back in time to the 90s and watch like a Xena Warrior Princess or a Hercules Legendary Journeys TV show with those quality of special effects, with that kind of caliber of acting, would I still be able to enjoy that experience, and would I want to watch like a TV movie that's made with that kind of budget, that kind of all-around level of quality? And if your answer to that is yes, I'll take that kind of fantasy if someone offered it to me, then these movies are probably worth checking out, because that's what they, at least the trailers for Mythica 1 and 2 and the Dragon Age Redemption movie, as I saw it, felt to me, is that they were kind of like, all these people went back in time and used the limitations of 90s television to create their movies, but I would say that they take the material more seriously than Xena or the Hercules. I think there was a lot more tongue-in-cheek or just kind of like goofy types of humor in those shows, and none of that seems to be present in these. So anyway, if you're looking for to scratch that fantasy itch that is just unapologetically kind of D&D inspired fantasy worlds with visual effects that look straight out of 90s television and acting, to boot. Even Kevin Sorbo is in Mythica 1 and 2. So, if you're open to that kind of thing and you're really wanting some fantasy, then these are probably worth checking out over at voodoo.com. There's also a ton of other stuff, a bunch of other B horror movies, a bunch of other B fantasy movies, a bunch of other options that you can check out that are all free. These are just a few that I highlighted that I thought might be worth checking out. So, but I would encourage you to go over to voodoo.com right now and see what you can find that'll maybe save you a few bucks and entertain you for an evening. As a reminder, you're invited to participate in the Great Backlog Burning of 2017 by avoiding all entertainment spending for 28 consecutive days, sometime between now and the end of August 9th. For more details on that event and the rewards that you can earn from it, look for a link in the description below. As a second reminder, I'm hosting a live stream to burn through some of my own backlog, specifically of video games in my case, while hanging out and talking with you guys. That's going to be Friday, June 23rd from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific time. And that's going to be right here on this YouTube channel. So I hope you'll join me for that. Also, stay tuned for my reactions to E3 as it unfolds next week. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.